Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the South Planning Committee at Shirehall today. We are not expecting a fire drill today. In the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather on the front of the building. I would like to inform you that this is a meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Could I also ask you please to ensure that mobile phones are switched off in order to those watching the live stream know who is speaking. Members and officers introduce themselves prior to speaking. To ensure members of this committee and all points raised by public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you that I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public and not a public meeting, and if such behaviour persists and takes place, I will adjourn the meeting. I shall now ask members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves, please. Starting with Ed, please.
Councillor Ed Potter, Councillor for Leighton Division.
Oops. Councillor Caroline Backnall, Councillor for Broseley.
Councillor Tony Parsons, Councillor for Basin Hill, Colin and Scott.
Councillor Nigel Martin, Councillor for Kendrick.
Nigel Lumbey, Councillor for Albrighton.
Councillor Hilary Love, Councillor for Church Stretton and Craven Arm.
Christian Lee, Shropshire Councillor for Bridge North East and Astley Abbots.
Andy Boddington, Councillor for Ludlow North.
Councillor Roger Evans, Councillor for the London Division.
Kelvin Hall, Principal Planner.
Graham French, Principal Planner.
Miranda Garrard, Solicitor. Tabitha Lewis, Planning and Development Services Manager.
And I'm David Evans, I'm Councillor for Church Stretton and Craven Arms and Chair of this committee. May I receive apologies for absence, please?
Apologies from Councillor Nick Heath, Committee Chair.
Thank you. No others? No, okay. Minutes of the last meeting held on the 15th of November. Is a proposal for the minutes, please? Thank you. Thank you. All in favour of the minutes? Thank you. Public questions?
We have no public questions, Chair.
Right. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, please.
Chair.
Councillor Christian Lee, please.
So, as a member of the Original East and the Abbey Division, I shall be making a statement with regards to the planning application. And I shall leave the meeting.
Councillor Lee, thank you. Right, we go to item number 5, and I believe Tabitha wants to.
Yeah, we'd like to ask the committee to change the recommendation of this application to deferral. Since publication, we've decided we need to do a bit more work on the conservation aspect of this. So we'd ask that the committee would agree to change the recommendation to deferral.
This is the land adjacent to the Sainsbury's supermarket on the Shrewsbury car park in Bridge North. So could I have a proposal for a deferral, please? Councillor Boddington, Councillor Lott seconded. All in favour of a deferral? Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you. We now move into item number 6, which is building at number 10 Stanmore Business Park, Bridgnorth. Graham, please.
Thanks, Chair. Some members visited the site this morning. The Unit 10 is southeastern end of Stanmore Business Park near Bridgnorth. It's a large portal frame building. Currently has permission for training use. The proposal is to operate pyrolysis units to recover high-value metals from small end-of-life electronic equipment. They're used similar to a Class B2 manufacturing use, but in fact it's sui generis as the material being processed is a waste at its point of origin. So the majority of the new processing plant equipment will be installed within the existing building at Unit 10. Externally, a new flue system and water tank are proposed. So pyrolysis is a thermal decomposition of organic materials at elevated temperatures in the absence of oxygen. It produces a solid biochar, a gas syngas, and sometimes an oil on condensation. Syngas can be combusted as a fuel at very high temperature in an oxidation chamber to break down any air pollutants. Material remains inside pyrolysis unit and is transported by screw conveyor at a defined speed until completion of the process. In this case, pyrolysis of small end-of-life electronic equipment such as computer motherboards produces a metal-rich biochar. This is not defined as a waste by the Environment Agency, so it can be transported to metal reclaimer without the need to meet waste regulations. So the processing plant itself would operate on a 24/7 basis. No delivery times would be restricted. All operations would be contained within the building. The process would only deal with low volumes of material, approximately 4,000 tonnes a year. This would generate no more than 10 return HGV movements a week. Total number of staff employed, it's a fairly labour intensive, and so there will be 20. Though due to shift working, the maximum number of visitors and staff on site at any one time would be around 15. There's ample car parking, as members saw this morning, to accommodate this. So the operation would require an environmental permit. Initially, this would be regulated by Shropshire Council's Public Protection Team, to whom a permit application has been submitted and is indeed about to be determined. A regulation may pass to the Environment Agency as annual throughput increases within the identified limits. So Worfield and Rudge Parish have objected on the basis of concerns about noise, air quality and odour. They don't consider the air quality assessment is sufficiently robust or that the pyrolysis process is sufficiently proven. The Environment Agency has not objected. They refer to the need to take appropriate account of air pollution issues and acknowledge that the Council's Environmental Protection Team would need to issue a permit for the process to become operational. The Environmental Protection themselves have not objected. They recommend that any noise emitting plant is appropriately attenuated. They're satisfied that air quality modelling is on the basis of worst case assumptions and that air quality impact would be negligible and would not result in any predicted exceedances of national air quality standards or the protection of human health. They advise that any environmental permit they may issue would be routinely audited. 10 public objections have been received. The main concerns relate to uncertainty about pyrolysis process and potential for pollution and health impacts. Other concerns relate to odour, noise and effects on biodiversity. Some members have individually received a recent representation from local resident Peter Wilson regarding air quality and health. The Environmental Protection Team has responded to this. There's some response in the latest reps sheet, but I would also draw members' attention to a more detailed email that was received yesterday evening. What it basically does is to say that, reiterate that the Public Protection and Environmental Protection are happy with the air quality modelling that has been undertaken, and that they are basically reassuring that the environmental permit process would be comprehensive and would involve real-time monitoring with a kind of red, amber, green mechanism, but that from the monitoring and modelling that's been undertaken so far, the level of emissions is significantly below the internationally recognised standards. So in policy terms, the site's located on an established industrial estate. Whilst the use is sui generis, it's similar in nature to a B2 manufacturing use. Members saw that the unit has sufficient space to comfortably accommodate the proposed use, which would be enclosed within the building. The use, as I said, would provide employment for 20 skilled workers. Concerns have been raised by Parish Council and some residents about air emissions and health, and environmental protection has responded. As I've said, they maintain that proposals would be rigorously controlled on the permitting process and would meet all relevant standards. The government's planning practice guidance on waste management instructs that planning should not seek to duplicate other regulatory regimes such as environmental permitting, and should assume that such regimes will discharge their duties in a proficient way. Issues to do with noise and odour are not anticipated from an external perspective, given the nature of the process and the enclosed nature of the premises. However, an amenity complaints procedure condition has been recommended in Appendix 1 to provide added reassurance. Given the advice of environmental protection regarding air quality, there's no valid reason to suspect any implications for local biodiversity. So, in summary, the proposed process would provide valued employment for 20 local people, would allow recovery of rare metals from end-of-life small electrical components, reducing pressure on primary resources. Business park settings considered appropriate for a proposal of this nature. Air emissions would be strictly controlled and routinely audited. It's concluded, therefore, that proposals are sustainable and in accordance with relevant national guidance and development plan when taken as a whole. So, Chair, approval is recommended.
Thank you very much. We have some speakers on this. We've got Mr. Peter Wilson. Peter Wilson.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Right. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Address the committee. Thank you.
Right. Good afternoon. Before I start on my 3 minutes, I can just mention that Mr. French had just produced a piece of information that I was not aware of. He referred there to air monitoring test results. I had been asking for those repeatedly and not been given them. So I'm going to speak to you on the basis that I've not seen those. Mr. French is now saying they are produced and are satisfactory. So this is what I was going to say. I firstly just mentioned I'm a resident of Stanmore. I live about 850 metres from the proposed plant. Obviously, I appreciate the potential value of a process to recover rare metals from electronic waste. I objected to this planning application because I believe the Stanmore site is unsuitable for the proposed use. You will, if you heat electronic waste to a high temperature, generate hazardous chemicals. And although it is indeed on an industrial estate, from an accident of history, that's an industrial estate that's actually landlocked in the Greenbelt. Immediately around it, there are two housing estates. There is the heavily used Stanmore Country Park, the boundary of which is just 45 metres from the flues of the proposed plant. There's arable farmland and there are two well-known pools. Just the report itself isn't explicit, but I'll just mention the materials that could be emitted, having looked at the air quality stroke emission statements from the applicants. Heavy metals, including cadmium, thallium, mercury, arsenic, lead. The World Health Organization says there's no safe exposure limit to lead. I've given you a link to that in the notes. PCBs, dioxins and furans, which are carcinogens, oxides of nitrogen, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and so on. When I spoke to the planning officer, which I did twice at some length whilst this matter was going through, I was assured that no recommendation for approval will be made unless he was satisfied there was no risk to health. With the greatest respect, I don't see how the scant and very, in my view, inadequate response from regulatory services can give such assurance. He'd further said that if they had any concerns raised by regulatory services, he would have recommended refusal. The air quality emissions assessments provided by the applicants run to over 90 pages, with highly complex theoretical modelling. Response from regulatory services on air quality is a single sentence, 3 lines, which simply endorses the conclusion of the applicants that impact on air quality would be negligible. No reference to the desal concerns expressed by residents and the parish council. No reference to regulatory services to any analysis of the modelling that's been submitted or any justifications for their conclusions. They do say, to be fair, that the permit will contain conditions on compliance with emission limits, and that will be routinely audited, although the environmental protection officer I first spoke to said that they did not have the staff time or whatever to do monitoring themselves. What I find a particular concern is that emissions monitoring had been done by the applicant. The first environmental protection officer I spoke to confirmed that emissions monitoring had been done by both the applicant themselves on a limited range of emission substances and a specialist contractor. He had received those results in September. He was going to analyse them on his return from holiday, but I heard nothing further, in spite of several prompts. I asked regulatory services about these results when I saw the recent changes on the planning portal, but nothing has been forthcoming. Yet I understand there was an email has now gone saying that they show no concerns. If there is factual evidence, why isn't it being produced? Their basis is purely being on theoretical modelling, which the applicants themselves accept is inherently uncertain. It's not tried and tested technology. It is potentially hazardous, and in my view, it's whilst I can clearly see the benefits of the technology if it works, this is very, very close to estates and sensitive areas, and it is potentially hazardous. My view is it should be deferred pending further submission of a more detailed response from regulatory services.
Thank you.
Sorry to be rather fast, but time limited.
Any questions, please, from Mr. Wilson? No. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we've got no representative from the parish council. We've got a request from Mrs. Marshall. Miranda will now read out. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Submission from Councillor Marshall. Good afternoon, committee. The application you are considering today is one that I've personally looked into greatly and had many conversations with the applicant, the locals, and indeed the planning officers. Whenever we are faced with new technologies, there will always be a certain amount of concern and uncertainty. And this application is indeed new, and you could say cutting-edge technology. So it has created a level of concern and uncertainty. End-of-life electronic waste is the fastest growing waste stream in the world and produces over 50 million tonnes per annum. Circular Resources have developed a safe way of recycling the precious metals in these waste components and placing them back into the manufacturing chain, thus reducing the amount of new precious metals that are required to be extracted from the ground around the world. It is worth noting that the extraction from the ground of these metals is an extremely high creator of carbon and is often extracted from some of the less safety-conscious countries in the world. The location on the site at Stanmore Industrial Estate is an established industrial estate on the edge of Bridgnorth and is a creator of employment for the local area. In our emerging local plan, we have house building within Bridgnorth, and therefore we need to encourage and create additional employment for the existing and potentially new locals. CRUK are creating in the first instance 20 much needed local jobs for the area, and this will be set to grow. You will see an objection by Worfield and Rudge Parish Council, which in itself is a very commendable report. In fact, I've never seen a single objection longer than the full application report. This objection followed on from an initial response from the Parish Council of no objection. I do, however, believe we need to listen to what the experts say about this application, the ones technically qualified to comment. 4.2 Environment Agency, no objection. 4.3 Regulatory Services Environmental Protection, no objection. They go on to say in 4.3i, the noise assessment predicts that noise from the proposed development is likely to be unnoticeable. 4.3 Environmental Protection has reviewed the application and is minded to accept and issue the environmental permit for the process. 6.2.2 Environmental Protection. The impacts of the proposed development on air quality are negligible. As the local member, it is always a hard decision to go against the view of one of my parish councils. However, I feel to truly represent the people that elect me, I have to be honest after looking at all the facts and not just take the easy option. I genuinely believe that to support this application is the correct thing to do for the betterment of the whole of my division. It is noteworthy to say that Worfield and Rudge Parish Council were far from unanimous in objecting to this application. Both the local Member of Parliament, the Right Honourable Philip Dunn MP, and I are very supportive of this application and feel we should fully embrace and be honoured that Stanmore could become the epicentre of an exciting new recycling technology. CRUK have invested millions of pounds into developing and refining this technique, and I truly believe this is an incredible opportunity for Bridgnorth and Shropshire as a whole. So I would ask committee to agree with the experts that have commented without objection and the officers' recommendations and approve the application with delegated authority to the officers subject to the conditions laid out in Appendix 1 and help give this area the much needed employment opportunity it is crying out for.
Thank you, Miranda. Yeah, and that's it. You are the agent and you have 3 minutes, please, to press the right hand button. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Change my guidance. So yes, thank you. This development is, as we've said, is for the recovery of materials from electronic waste. The UK is currently exporting its waste electronics abroad for other countries to deal with, either through refineries in Europe or manual labour, often in developing countries. At the same time, the UK is dependent on overseas sources for the critical minerals needed to make electronics, including countries like China, Brazil, Republic of Congo, with the associated environmental impacts and social impacts indeed in those countries. The applicant, Circular Resources, is using a tried and tested technology, pyrolysis, in a novel way to provide a solution to this. Pyrolysis heats the feedstock materials, waste electronics, to relatively low temperatures, typically around 300 degrees, in the absence of oxygen, creating a chemical reaction that separates out the metals without melting them. The metals are then in a perfect form for easy extraction and reuse in manufacturing, replacing raw materials derived from mining. Pyrolysis is actually a familiar technology used since ancient times. The obvious example is charcoal, but it's used in numerous chemical processes throughout the world. The proposed development combines this tried and tested pyrolysis technology with state-of-the-art air abatement equipment to ensure a clean and efficient process. As has been noted previously, the scale of the proposed development is actually quite small because the feedstock elements are quite small. So total inputs are less than 10 tonnes a day. This equates to about 1 HGV delivery a day. The whole processing plant and storage of the feedstock fits easily inside the main hall of the former Marchers training facility, other than the 2 flues that have been mentioned that will extend through the roof and an external water tank. The height of the stacks was determined by air quality experts through the modelling that's been mentioned to ensure there would be no adverse impacts. The application was supported by detailed air quality and noise assessments undertaken by independent specialists. Both assessments adopted the precautionary principle so that where any uncertainty did exist, worst case inputs were used for the calculations. The assessments were then informed by preliminary trials set up to obtain detailed measures of emissions. And that's the monitoring that's been referred to, where the levels of emissions have been shown to be much lower than the regulatory standards. The results in respect of human health, ecological receptors and residential amenity all show that any impacts would be negligible. Yes, indeed. We've already mentioned about the fact that there will be a permit to regulate the facility, so I won't go into that. But just to mention, in relation to employment, it's obviously an important matter. We're looking to employ about 20 people initially and looking to expand it as the project grows, and probably we're looking to develop the facility as a hub for the UK as a whole with around about 50 people in total. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Yeah. Oh, Christian Lee, thank you.
Yes, you talk about there being 2 stacks. Will these stacks sort of be green in colour or suitable colour to blend in well with the local environment?
Well, at the moment they're just proposed to be stainless steel stacks. There's a number of stacks nearby on the estate. So we looked at those. It's basically in keeping with the existing stacks nearby. They could be any colour, but that seems appropriate.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good work. Dr. Parsons, please.
Thank you, Chair. This was an application which, when I first read the detail of it, I was very much in two minds regarding it. But it was absolutely essential, I think, that the site visit made such a difference to where I now stand. These were obviously very professional people that the operations director that we spoke to, who took us through the process. And the late papers we've also received from showing the environmental protection position has allayed some of my fears with regards to the emissions. This is sort of groundbreaking technology, and it will be good, in my view now, that this will be centred in Shropshire, and so I will be supporting this application.
Thank you. Councillor Lumley, please.
Yes, it was said that it's not proven technology. I think if we adopted that, nothing would get done, and the UK wouldn't be a world leader in a lot of processes. The industrial estate is in surrounded by green belt, and really is in the middle of nowhere. So if you're going to put something somewhere, that seems the ideal industrial estate. With regard to the environmental protection, our job and the planning job is for the building and its use. The regulation is for others to determine. And I actually believe that just listening to the lady there, we should be cleaning up our own mess and not exporting it to a third world country. So I mind at the moment to agree.
Thank you. Councillor Boddington, please.
Thank you, Chair. I spent this morning actually looking at research into emissions and this sort of technology, and I was really quite impressed. And it is good. This is not like the early days of incinerators, where they pumped out dioxins and all sorts of stuff out the top of the stack. And now there's much more control, both regulatory and also in terms of technology. And there's much more understanding of how to control things. I think the other points I was going to make have actually been said. You know, this is cutting edge technology. We should not be nervous of new technology, and I'll be supporting you.
Thank you. Councillor Christian, please.
Yeah, yes, I wasn't able to attend the meeting this morning, the site meeting, but I do know where the proposed facility is sited with living locally. I don't have a great knowledge of the environmental protection, but having read the report and what's been said, I feel satisfied that, you know, all the necessary protections will be put in place with the conditions, and I very much welcome the new jobs that will be created locally as well. So I should be supporting it.
Okay. Well, just to speak, please. Councillor Potter.
I support it. I'm familiar with this process. I actually visited the site when I was on cabinet, and reading through the submissions around the environmental aspect. Any concerns I did have, I think, are very much allayed, and I'm very much minded to support this. It's great for Shropshire, great for the economy, and a positive step.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Bagon, do you want to?
Yeah, just to say that up until a week ago, I knew absolutely nothing about processes such as this, and I've found it fascinating finding out more about it. I think it's an issue that is really important. I think we need to find ways of dealing with waste of this nature. I'm certainly in support of this application.
I found the site meeting extremely helpful and useful this morning. Learned a lot about how the process works, and my fears and concerns that I had before going have been alleviated. I would be happy to propose this.
Okay. Councillor Lumley, please.
Ken, if we're proposing that we go with officer recommendation, approve subject to conditions, I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Larkin, do you want to say anything before we take the vote?
No, I've listened to what's been said and I'm happy to support also.
All right. Okay. The proposal and second, do you want to say about the conditions? No.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one reference to unless otherwise approved in the condition 9 in Appendix 1, which is imprecise. So seek committee approval to remove that reference from the condition.
Okay, thank you. Miranda, do you want to speak?
Through you, Chair, if I could just add to what Graham's just said, there were actually just needs looking at the wording in conditions 5, 8 and 9. So that could be part of the proposal that's delegated to officers to reword those, and appropriately it could be delegated to the assistant director or the perhaps the development services manager in consultation with legal to just reword those 3 conditions.
Yeah. Okay. Happy with that? Happy with that, Councillor Lambert? Yep. Okay. Do we have a call at the vote, or we just have a show of hands?
If you feel that you're reading the room, Chair, you're happy to take it. I'm happy to take a show of hands, or I can do a roll call vote.
A roll call when it's recorded.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have a proposer and a seconder, as you've heard, members. I'll call your names if you can indicate for, against, or abstain, please. Councillor Bagnall.
For.
Councillor Boddington.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Roger Evans. Thank you. Councillor Harton.
For.
Councillor Lee.
For.
Councillor Love. For. Councillor Lumby.
For.
Councillor Parsons.
For.
Councillor Potter.
For.
Councillor David Evans.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you. We now go on to item number 7, which are appeals. Whether you want to run through these or whether just for noting. Shall we go through them, Calvin, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. There's 4 appeal petitions at the back of the agenda papers. The first one relates to a site at Lift Bank, which was for the erection of a self-built dwelling. The inspector, this was dismissed. The inspector agreed that it was open countryside and not a suitable location for a new dwelling. This one was refused under delegated powers and dismissed for the same reasons as the refusal reason. The next one was for this came to committee. This was one for change of use and alterations of the Boar's Head at Bishop's Castle. The officer recommendation was to grant permission along with a list of building consent on the basis that it would impact on the vibrancy of the area, and the officer was happy that it wouldn't impact on the local area and on the list of building conservation area. Members, you'll probably recall that you made a resolution to go against the officer recommendation and to refuse the application. At appeal, the inspector agreed with members and considered that there would be an adverse impact on the listed building conservation area and also concerns over the loss of the community facility, and so the appeals were dismissed. Interestingly, with those ones, there was an officer recommendation to grant, and that was partially on the basis that there was no objections from Historic England or the conservation officer, but the inspector obviously took a different view, hence the reason for their decision. And then the final one was in relation to an application to amend a condition at a site at Longville in the Dale. This was appealed against non-determination. This application was dismissed. The crux of the matter was that the application was to vary a condition, to remove the condition which required
that the building was only used as a holiday let, so removing the condition would allow it to be a residential dwelling. The inspector decided that that went beyond the terms of the original permission, which was for a holiday let only, and you couldn't do that through varying the condition, and therefore that one was dismissed as well. And I think I might have missed one out. Highly. Yes, this one was again dismissed. This was refused under delegated powers on the basis that it was an outline application for the erection of a pair of semi-detached dwellings. It was refused on the basis that it would cause a cramped environment, out of character with the area, overly prominent, an impact on residential amenity, and the inspector agreed with the officer and dismissed the appeal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we've got the date of the next meeting, is January the 17th at 3 o'clock. I'd just like to thank you all for attending today, and you for attending the site visit. Thank our officers for the input, and thank those for turning up for this public speaker. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Chair, once we're offline, could I just raise a sort of housekeeping point?